and it is 6:30. Let's start off by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Brian, do you mind doing a roll call, please?
Sure. Kimberly Harper, she is absent tonight. Eric Yankee, absent. Forrest Milzo is absent. Supervisor File,
Present.
Mr. Gittens,
Here.
Trustee Morocco,
Here.
Mr. Doolan,
Here.
and Mr. Zatuna.
Here.
We do have a forum.
Okay. Next item of business, we've got to approve the minutes from November 20th, 2024, the last time that we met. I'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next item, do we have any presentation from the Carlisle group or anything? No? Okay.
We'll
So,
cover it below.
okay. So, public comment, nobody's here, nobody's online. I guess the next, we just jump down to I, so reports.
I gotta do the agenda.
Oh, okay. So agenda for additions, deletions, require a majority vote of the board members present.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add item I-5, discussion and potential movement on authorizing someone to do the Dixie Highway Gateway park design.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right.
And then we have to make a motion to approve it as amended, right, Brian?
Yep.
So then I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The ayes have it. All right, so we can jump down to the ayes. Election of officers. We've got a couple seats that are becoming available. I know that my seat was up, I believe, at the end of the year. I had to reapply. We've also had some members that are, I think they had intentions on making the meetings, but they just have not in the last year or so. So we probably need to, and we talked about this a little bit, we need to work on getting some new people that want to be here. Obviously, the more people that we have on the board, the better off that we'll be, the more thoughts, ideas that we can get, and the more hands on deck to go, put these things to action. So that's something that we definitely need to work on. I don't know if it's anything that we need to address today.
Who are they?
The people who have,
The officers. Who's the current officers?
I believe it's Gittens. Kimberly Harper is the secretary, and I'm not sure who the VP was.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I have it written down. I know that Kendall, I believe.
Kendall might have been. the
Vice
VP.
chair?
Yeah.
I think I was maybe the vice chair.
Yes, you were vice chair.
Okay.
I was appointed you vice chair. Then Kendall was treasury.
Chuck, do you want to appoint officers, or do you,
Wanna
it
hold
could
on?
push us out pretty far.
Do we, on the DDA, the supervisor appoints the officers or the,
No, we make nominations, I think, don't we,
Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah.
no, not this time. You guys can make it. You guys are more familiar.
Pardon?
Do I have to make the?
No, I'm just asking, do you feel with the
this
board that
point-
we have, should we elect officers of who's here?
I would ask that we go one more round to the next meeting. Give me one last time to fill up a couple more of these positions. I need to go back through, there's a couple of them that have run their time, their term's over. So I just need to kind of I think I need to fill 4.
Okay,
So give me until the next meeting so we can have hopefully the other 4 here and have a full board.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to postpone the election of officers until the second meeting of 2025.
I'll second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So the Corbin property demolition update, if you've driven by, you've seen that the property is now down. The pavement is cleaned up. It snowed right after, so I don't know what it looks like underneath, but I would imagine it's all been backfilled and everything like that. It looks great, because I thought that building was a bit of an eyesore, so I drive past it every day to take my kids to school and back past it to get to the office, and it looks,
Better.
It looks better already. Yeah.
With nothing there, it looks better.
Yep. So,
Blight removal.
so that's awesome. So we had some subcommittee meetings. Our subcommittee meeting, we have a subcommittee meeting for the sign, and we have a subcommittee meeting for the design. During our subcommittee meeting of the sign, we talked about design a little bit, only because we were already there. We wanted to get our ideas out. And so I presented some things that are maybe in slides that we could maybe see. Maybe we should do the sign first.
Yeah.
Let me pull it up real quick.
So our basic design idea was that we wanted a linear sign. So this is not a linear sign, this is more of a square sign, but this is AI generated. We also had discussed in previous meetings that we would have a tagline possibly of where tradition meets tomorrow. It's supposed to say meets. AI is not, it's not super savvy when it comes to taking down everything that I requested it to. But I was reminded that we already have a tagline for Independence, which is experience everything. So it's probably best if we keep that, and we can discuss that as a board, but we hired people to put that together, and it's probably best that we would keep experience everything as the cohesive message of the township, which is fine. That's just there for a visual. So our idea would be something like that, to have Independence Township and then have whatever tagline is at the bottom. It would be more of a lengthy sign, and then on the right-hand side, I have another picture from a different township where there's a column on the right-hand side and maybe putting a Liberty Bell at the top of it, and that would help us keep to our traditional values and also have the Liberty Bell. You can see the Liberty Bell at the top.
Do you have this picture in the slideshow?
Yeah.
Cool.
There it is. Okay, so I don't know where Colton is, but scouring the internet, we came across this one. We really liked it. We've had it for about a year now. We put out, our subcommittee team, we put out probably, 20 different designs on a table and went through ones that wouldn't work for sure, and we all kind of came to the consensus that this was the best looking sign, or something like it. It doesn't need to be exactly like it, but we like that the left of it would have the words. I don't know where you're at. Okay. The left of it would have the words, and then on the right-hand side, we could have some kind of stone, and we could have at the top a Liberty Bell. So I don't know what's going on with your computer.
ITV.
Okay. So
Okay.
it would be a combination of the last slide where it would say Independence Township on the left, and then it would say underneath it, experience everything. And then on the right-hand side again would be the column with the Independence, the bell on top. And then we'd also talked about down the road, if we wanted to make other entry ways, right, we were gonna have to have one coming south on Dixie. We're gonna have to have one possibly coming to the other entryways of the corridor. So instead of doing the whole thing, maybe we just do the column with the bell and then incorporate it. Yeah, a smaller version, just to kind of give that footprint. So, yes, Chuck.
So, the township spent a whole bunch of money coming up with this branding,
Yes.
and I think that we have to stay true to it. I mean, we've already started putting other signs out there with it's not the Liberty Bell anymore, it's the one that with like Pine Knob and all that in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we need to keep the theme like that all the way through. I mean, as much as I liked the Liberty Bell,
Mm-hmm.
the other board decided that's what our brand's gonna be, and I think we need to stick to that brand.
within the,
This is the identity, right? So this is what
Sure.
they're first gonna see. And that first identity should be the brand that the Board of Trustees voted to go with.
I'll comment on that.
Go for it.
I think we talked about that, just because, before Chuck was here. And there was discussion of the DDA corridor having some latitude with how we were going to brand it. I agree. I don't like, I mean, my problem is I don't like the township logo. I wasn't, that was, a handful of people picked it and we all, we never even got to really talk about it. And then all of a sudden it was adopted at one meeting, but it is what it is. We're stuck with it now, but, I don't know.
It is
I think I think it does an injustice to the heritage of the township, but I guess the question is, can we identify the Dixie corridor as its own entity with the flags we're doing, with the marketing we're doing, with everything, or, what, I mean, I understand your point exactly too. It's, we kinda all were like, we don't wanna, if we have the power to not lose the Liberty Bell, we don't wanna lose the Liberty Bell, was kind of our thing. I'm not, so I think that is definitely related to the, not the design of the park or the design of the sign, but what the printing on the sign is certainly, it's gonna affect it. If we don't have a bell on top, it's gonna be just an affixed logo to the sign, opposed to a detail of the sign. I don't know how you would make this into a
I feel like,
freestanding detail.
my position is I feel like it would be hard to incorporate this into the elegance of that sign up that we saw before the Colton one. The only thing that I'm thinking now, if that's a huge objection, is, because we don't want to put in all this time and effort and we make a design and then it's not going to get approved by the board.
The board doesn't approve what we're doing. We approve it.
Okay.
Okay, so to that point, sorry to interrupt, you're one point of access to the township. So it would look awfully silly, and I'm gonna use that word probably silly, if at any other point to access into the township, they have this and we have just that there. There needs to be a cohesiveness all the way through.
Sure.
And I was not here when this logo was adopted. It is what it is, like we said. The question is, can we make it interesting enough like that?
Yeah. The only thing that I could think is that we would keep the Colton sign that as we like it, and in the verbiage part, maybe we could have Independence Township. I mean, this is the text, this is the logo. I mean, this is the
Or the
font
bell.
that we would have to use.
Yeah, that's all that.
So, I mean, we could incorporate that, and then we could have that logo within that blue
We
area.
could definitely lose this Oakland County, Michigan that
I
I've
would hope
posted
so.
forever. It makes
That's
no
part of the logo.
sense.
I tried to do that.
I know, but we do have some latitude as the DDA to, that makes no sense being on there at that location.
And you won't even see it. You
The
won't be
whole
able to see it
point that they
driving by.
fought to get that on there was to say that it was for trucks driving around the state. So they knew what county we lived in. Otherwise, it just never made any sense to me to say where the county was, but whatever.
Is there a subdued version of this
There's
logo?
multiple Independence
That's the one.
Township, Independence
Really?
places though.
Yeah.
This whole thing.
Not on Dixie Highway and Andersonville Road, there ain't.
This whole-
Because I've seen the signs, I don't think some
Nowhere
of the
near
signs,
here,
does
by
all
the
the
way.
signs say experience everything? I feel like I saw.
So
one.
the only
not
one
see
I'm
that.
personally aware of is the one over there on
Clinton Road?
Clarkson Road.
Clintonwood Park.
Yeah, and I do believe it does have that,
Okay.
the tagline in there.
I think we
it's
could,
just the
I think that
logo.
you could take this new bell with the pine trees and the sun, and they could do it in like a laser cut bronze thing up there that would give
That's
you
what
the
I was thinking.
silhouette of it to give you the
Right.
gist. It's not gonna be blue and green and yellow, it's gonna be made out of, like, what's on top of that, but a laser cut outline of the new bell logo. I
Yeah.
think it would be, that way we could incorporate it like you're saying, but not have not have it be printed, have it be,
I would say,
made out of something.
try to have the metal like you have up there. I would say have two versions of it. And then I would light it up at the bottom middle, so it gives that whole depth perception to it.
Yeah.
So it'll give what really is a two-dimensional, almost a three-dimensional look.
So there's enough here to be a silhouette.
Yeah, I think so.
Of the logo.
Yeah.
So I do
Yeah.
know
And it would
that,
be cut out where it's white would be cut
Right,
out.
would be clear.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
just look through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
so I do know that when I was talking with the logos for the new gear, I did tell them that drop the birds. Okay, you can't see the birds in, on a logo and a
Right.
digital one. I'm not a digital, but a knitted one, so we said drop the birds. And we did make that, everything else basically in that white section clear. Because if you try to do anything else
Yeah.
with it, any
Yeah.
other colors, it's just,
Right, and that might be a cheaper option than having a full-size metal or stone bell.
It's
Yeah,
easy
'cause
now,
it's-
they-
you have it laser
What's
cut.
It's easy now to
Yeah.
do that.
there's
I don't
a
know.
couple of people in Waterford that do it, because I looked at it when I was putting the sign on the Everest football field.
Okay.
So there's a couple of people in Waterford that'll probably do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
Sounds
I'm just
good.
saying that, if we want to keep, I think we spend a bunch of money for a brand. We're trying to build a brand here, right?
Yeah,
Independence Township, it's park-like, the whole Norman Rockwell thing. We need to have a consistent message at all egress and access points, right? So, whether we're talking in the DDA or we're talking over here on Sashabaw or wherever.
yeah, we agreed, with the last, with the last group of people that were in the DDA, the whole theme has been, we need to keep it consistent, we need to keep it cohesive. So I'm glad you spoke up about that, but we do agree, we don't want it to look like the DDA is outside, something completely different from Independence Township. But we also don't want it to look like that, because that looks, it looks playful, and that looks elegant, like you're entering into.
I think we can get the metal work done, part of the sign design team of, who has the real sign design people,
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah,
Let me ask you, on that sign there where it says Colton, would it say Independence Township?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then down the face of the rock, for lack of better terms, would it say Experience Everything?
Probably underneath Independence Township, it would say experiencing everything, because you'd probably lose the text in the stone.
How wide are you anticipating it to be and how tall, right? Because you got a lot of letters here.
I'm picturing the
Yeah.
thing's gonna be about 16 feet wide at least.
And then how does that fit with our sign ordinance? Are we gonna have to go and get a
I-
variance on it?
No,
No.
or the township, we're exempt from
We're, yeah.
our own as a
Are we?
ordinance.
Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah,
So we
Well,
were
if we-
thinking 3 to 4 feet tall, and then
We've
16
given
feet wide.
we've given variances for monarchs or, or marquees on top of, scrolling and pendants and things, I think over on Doc O'Neill's old building, or the one on, behind Rite Aid there, or whatever, on Main Street, where theirs was a little taller. And,
yeah.
but I think we have some latitude for that. But I'm thinking it's gonna be at least 16 feet wide. You're gonna need at least 10 feet for the words to go on, and then the tower being built.
Right.
If we keep the top of this tower no taller than 6 feet, and then put the marquee on top, the cutout bell on top, that's pretty close to being, within the parameters, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I gotta imagine the Colton area, that's probably 4 feet high,
Right.
Yeah.
so top of the stone probably gets you to close to 6, but.
6.
Yeah, we don't want it too small to where you won't see the verbiage, we don't want it too big to where it's going to block the view of the park, or block the view of, even the Sportsman's Club. We want to respect the patrons on Dixie.
This sign clearly picture was taken when it just got put in, the plants are small, you can see the cinder blocks still,
Mhm.
like it wasn't much, this was like, look, we just got our sign put up. And we're proposing on the landscaping side, the same typical thing with bigger stones, native grasses, things that are gonna be low in front of it. kinda
Okay.
similar to this.
And light-
And
and
I'll go
lighting.
into that, we can go into that when we get to the landscape part, but
Yeah,
So,
and
to
lighting
get
as
a
well.
consensus, you know.
Brian, can you go back to the other photo that was shared?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
And while he's doing that, here's my thought process, Chuck, to your point. If signs are gonna go up throughout the rest of the township that are gonna look like this, I think with the idea of having some kind of a laser cutout, we could do something like this on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you could.
Yeah, I don't think, I
It
think we
would-
were trying to get something a little more,
Oh, we want
not
something
as
more
square,
grand.
not as square.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we could go wider if we need to. I mean, I wanted the more grand idea. I think I was the one that said, let's make it long.
Yeah,
But Chuck has a point, is, you know, we're not gonna get to make all the decisions for the township, so if this is what's gonna be used elsewhere, I think we should have that conversation to say, we could do that in a laser cutout, and we could, and maybe on the other side, we can make it work too, I don't know. I think that's where the designers come in to tell us
yeah,
what would
sign
work.
designer.
Yeah, I think that also the thing to keep in mind is that we have limited real estate on other potential pieces, right? Whether we can come in or out of the, I'm more concerned about coming into the township. So we should probably try to pick a design. We should, you know, since we're gonna probably be the first, right, to come up with what that's gonna look like, we're gonna kind of set the standard and kind of set the bar. But we should also maybe take a look and say, okay, at the end of White Lake Road, where our township ends, if we someday want to go and knock on the door there and say, hey, can you give us an easement to put a sign in here? You know, what can we fit there? You know, because I ran into this problem a little bit at the Manors when I started redoing the signs, because I kind of came up with something kind of like that for the first entrance on Elk Run, and I didn't think about Deerwood, and Deerwood's footprints was a lot smaller. And then I tried to squeeze it back in, and it worked, but it didn't work as good. So I think if taking a little experience, let's look at the other places around and see what would fit most appropriately there as
Yeah.
well. Even if we have to make it just a little bit smaller.
Yep.
And some of those other roads, I mean, Dixie Highway is probably one of the from a speed limit side of it, it's probably one of the fastest ones.
Right.
So you probably need a little bit bigger. So we could probably go a little bit smaller, and I don't know exactly where in White Lake Road does it change over.
Yeah, it's right there.
Andersonville.
Andersonville.
And,
the
okay,
corner.
it's right there on the corner. So there's a stoplight and everything there, so we can actually go a little bit smaller and still have people read it.
Right,
Yeah, so I mean, let's just keep that design in mind based on where we probably would like to set it in other places.
sure.
I think you could do a mini version.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
then
mean-
version, or we even discussed just having the column as an entry, you know, at the other entryways. So,
but how would they know that it's Independence Township?
that's a good point.
Yeah,
So I think that if we went with the idea of doing some type of laser cutout for this, we could scale it on the tower as well. The problem is readable, you know,
Yeah.
depending on how
I
big
think,
that tower goes.
I think what we're talking about is having the laser cut out for just the bell.
Yeah.
And
I
then
know
having
that.
the words and the.
Yeah, what
on
I'm,
the
what
stuff.
I'm suggesting is that if we potentially look at doing the whole thing as a laser cutout.
I
In
don't
like
think
a
that would be-
metal of some type, because I think with Chuck's idea of backlighting it,
Mhm.
I think it would actually look pretty sharp.
But would it be big enough to read it when you're
But
driving 50
So
I
miles?
don't
you're
know.
saying we could do the Independence Township letters backlit profiled on the board and then the bell up here on top of those still, eh? Or you're trying to make it just look a rectangle like that?
I prefer your first option of putting the bell up here, but I'm saying if we had to stay consistent with everything else, I think we could do this as one unit and either attach it here, attach it there, or attach it there. But I think we need an expert to kind of weigh in and say what's actually gonna work. Because if we do the cutout for the whole thing, it's gotta be mounted to it at some point. And one of our goals was keep the maintenance and the upkeep low.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if we have the components the same, we'll have some latitude to move the parts around. But I agree, the tech, you know, if you wanna stay with the text and the bell and.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to have a sign company design it.
Right.
You know, once we get a couple, we have an example of a sign like this, like the Colton sign that we used for landscaping that we'll show you that's also similar, but I think we're all on the same, you know, I
Yeah.
think we're all getting on the same page with, then getting conceptual sign drawings, right?
Right.
Of what it looks like.
And that's what this meeting is about. We're not design experts, right? But we want to give our designer an idea to run with, not just have them make something, come back to us, and then we're like, no, not like that. And then we're having to have them redo
Right.
things over and over again. Because we have right here from the Carlisle group, which we're going to discuss later, that they're saying that they would do 2 meetings and come up with a few designs to come back to us with. But if we give them something, hey, this is what you need to go on, these are the ideas we have, then they're not just going into it dark. They see our vision, they bring it to life.
Right, and I think we got that for them, the submittal.
So, to that end, is, basically what we're saying is, we're gonna give them our logo, so you gotta stay as true as possible to it, just make it look more elegant and, you know, whatever
Fancy.
those adjectives we wanna use, and say, now go to it.
Right, because everywhere else in the township, we're just taking that logo and slapping it on a piece of plexi and backlighting it on all the park signs. That's,
Yeah.
it's, you know, totally different than
What we're trying to.
creating a three-dimensional
Right.
looking sign, but I think we're all in agreement, so that we're gonna stick with the components of the agreed-upon logo, is that
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So,
so we can, we
in
can
some
move on.
manner.
Does anybody else want to talk about this component of what we talked? The only other thing that we discussed is that we would do the sign on the most south part of
The
the
property.
land, and we do it on a 45-degree angle so that we didn't need to do something on the front and the back. Because we didn't want to do a completely perpendicular sign to where we have to do something on each side of the sign. If it's at 45 degrees, then we just need to do it as people are driving in.
The
Some
only
angle.
thing, with my experience being on Dixie Highway, and since we're spending money on it, like for the design, and I think the way, you know, people are driving 50 miles an hour, so you want to capture their attention. So maybe, you know, like the height or how close to be, you know, to a Dixie road, can make a huge difference to capture their vision. They are
Yeah.
entering into, you know, different town, and, you know, like we're marketing our town, so
Yep.
that's all.
Yeah.
Right.
We also need to be mindful of if we're gonna put in a lane, a bus lane down the road. We may not do it right away, but if it's gonna come, we obviously wanna place the sign so it doesn't have to be moved again.
Yeah, we're gonna be out of the road right away no matter what.
Okay,
And the bus lane, decel lane would be in the road right away.
okay,
So I don't, you know, I think we would be, we wouldn't be able to put our sign where the bus decel lane would be able to go. The county
of
would
setback,
conflict,
okay.
would be an issue for them, you
Okay.
know? So you have to be covered on that.
okay. Does one of you guys wanna talk about your, design subcommittee for the land?
Well, the whole thing was all my idea.
Yeah. Especially if you don't like it. Beat them up over this plan.
Brian, do you have a visual you throw up? Okay.
He doesn't have this.
Oh,
I
okay,
just sketched that up before I came here.
got it, okay.
So he only has mine, which is very, and I wanna put this out there, it's very elaborate. It's definitely not gonna look like this. If the public's thinking it's gonna look like the one that I shared, it's not gonna happen. So this is a sign, is this the sign you were talking about?
So we use this sign as an example of using, so the concept that we were talking about, and I was, you know, and you guys chime in with other ideas, was to start off with the southern part of the landscaping to be lower boulders, sawgrass, maintenance-free, like this is depicting how we would landscape the sign. Low maintenance, the parks go over there in the winter, cut the grass down, you know what I mean? Boulders and rocks, it just had a lineal sign, just happened to be,
Yeah.
part of it, you know?
Mhm.
So that's why that picture's there, is really to just show. So I was kinda thinking that with the concepts you'll see is that we've got a lot of lakes, so the grasses and the boulders and the river rock kinda ties into that a little bit. And then when you get into the planters, they kinda tie into the rural character of the horse and, you know, acreage communities. And then everything steps back from the south, so One thing we had talked about was this lineal rain garden along the south, because we have to control the water on the property. So we're already a low spot, all the lots drain into this lot. So having something low on the south side, like a dry riverbed or some sort of thing with native Michigan grasses or plants that were low, was kind of a way to retain the water on the property and keep it, and then it would just slowly leach into the ground. That was a concept.
Yeah, does he have those other pictures that we looked
He
at?
does have the other pictures.
Okay.
I think there's a picture of that, Brian, of like a dry bed. Right there.
Yeah,
Now-
looks good.
Something that would just allow water, you know, to collect and slowly go down, and we, you know, these rain garden concepts are pretty popular with native vegetation for Michigan, so we were trying to stick to the Michigan lake country theme type of deal,
Yeah.
right? You wanna go over the backdrop stuff, so?
Yeah, so, well, I wanna first address the fountain, cause, David, when we met to talk about the sign, there was some talk about a fountain.
Yeah.
When we met to talk about this, there were some pretty good conversations about why a fountain would just bring in a lot of maintenance and upkeep along
Mhm.
with it. And we don't know if that well that's on the property will produce. So
Sure.
we just decided to scrap that idea and just move forward with some benches and really just a native area. And so the idea here, one of the ideas that I had proposed when I met with David was having sidewalks coming in. After reviewing that and doing some research, is probably not a great idea, because we wouldn't have the permission of the neighbors to potentially have a sidewalk going into their property. So we've decided to just landscape that and have one entrance and one exit. And then as you're walking through, this just kind of builds up to the point where you'll see some of the evergreens and the images that are shared right there.
And so this is an example, a little bit exaggerated, but we had a couple examples, as you'll see, of evergreens mixed with color-changing deciduous trees, kind of as the northern backdrop against the Sportsman's Bar, and then it steps down towards the front. So there was, some of these were just, you know, combinations of deciduous trees, evergreen trees, changing color bushes that the architect would work on. But as a more opaque background to the whole lineal part of the park. And then, to John's point about the sidewalks, you guys talked about being, if we landscape the park with stone and things that don't require, we talked about being conscious of having breaks in the landscaping, like between the native plants over here that could be a butterfly park or something, and the evergreens. So we deliberately put in places to cut through the vegetation into the park, but they're not sidewalks, but to make sure that people aren't, it's not so opaque and dense that they're trashing the bushes and cutting through, going in there, you know, from the bar to have a smoke, or, you know. So kind of having some openings that people could traverse, knowing that they would. So
Okay.
it's kind of was a natural pathway that we deliberately left a break from each side that people could traverse into the park without it being a set sidewalk, you know?
And all this here is grass.
We weren't proposing any grass or very little grass. It was all gonna be, well, we think it should be hardscape. It should be some sort of rock or
This,
something.
All this here.
And, you know, rock beds and plantings. Now, it can be grass. It depends on how we elevate it. One of the discussions, if you go to the planters, Brian, that we talked about, was using these types of raised beds for perennials, so that if we had volunteers or organizations doing it, the plants that would need to be watered, because all of this stuff that we're proposing isn't gonna need to be irrigated. It should live on its own once it takes root, you know what I mean? Except for the raised beds, like the Historical Society, is that who does the ones downtown Clarkston? Somebody does all the flower beds downtown Clarkston. Like if there was so kind of we were thinking that if you did raised beds, and these come in different lineal containers and stuff like that, or some sort of raised bed, if nobody ever volunteered 10 years from now or 5 years from now, the perennial part could just be removed from the park. You're not stuck with these beds that aren't being maintained, so that option would just be removable.
Yeah.
But it would also be containable where if we had if somehow behind the sign would be the location of the hand pump or a well, because putting a well there means we gotta have a well house, it's gotta be protected from the weather, it's gotta be winterized. There's things that have to happen that we would, need to incorporate a structure into, but these, you could literally bring the water to it like they do with the ones downtown, where the purpose that does them, waters. So that was just an idea of not, I know at my house, being a historical house, the maintenance on the house is so much that I don't want flower beds to be maintained, so we do everything in big pots and planters so we can manage. We're not managing flower beds and weeds everywhere, so those are just, why we threw that one idea out of.
Okay.
And architecturally, it does, if you like the design of it, it ties into the rural, gives it that kind of country rural feel and they're cheap and you can replace them, or we could laminate those with wood or make them look different too, but,
I think with the vegetation, we're gonna have to have water, and we can't rely on the well working, I don't even know if it works now, it probably does, right?
It's just a pipe in the ground right now,
But there's, a water tap at the road, so it's possible we could just connect it to that and have a housing behind the sign that's stored, that could be locked, and so nobody's tampering with it. But I feel like we're gonna need water, even if we do this, we're gonna need some source of water to get plants water.
It would eventually just be for those, otherwise, I think when the pine trees, the trees, the deciduous trees, the native grasses, none of that requires daily vegetation like houses have, with sprinkler systems. Once they're established, they stay, but the challenge is gonna be the water.
Yeah.
If we can tap, Dave McKee had something to say about the water tap, that it was a potential issue with it.
Yeah,
That particular one?
we'll have to find out,
Yeah.
for sure.
But we did leave the well pipe, which would be a shallow well with a pump motor that we could hook up in a little decorative box that, made out of galvanized
get a
metal or
faucet.
something, and then they could just pull the pump in the fall, and just put it back in the spring, and it would just be a shallow well pump, just a little 220 pump like people use in their lake for water in their grass. That's kind of the setup we got, with just a pipe in the ground.
Okay.
Anybody, before we get to any further, anybody have any ideas or thoughts or
Questions?
dislikes, concerns about the other design?
Sportsmen,
Yeah.
do they have a well water or tap water?
I would think they're on city
They
water.
have to be,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're probably on city, they use a lot of water.
I think
So,
they're on sewer and water.
how about if we can connect through their pipe, the main line that goes into his building, if you can, pull a side pipe from it and.
Well, there's one at the road for
If we
this
were gonna
particular
tap into
property.
the street, we'd put a curb box in and tap into the road main directly.
I see.
Just as a point of clarification, your diagram here, right, this one, this is the full width of the property, right?
Yes,
Well,
it's 41 by 44, right?
41 by 150.
44, and then 150 on the sides.
If you looked at this to scale, the width of this would actually be about twice as long in
Okay.
reality. This is really there's no way to fit it at the scale on paper. It would be like a 1-inch square off the edge of the paper because of the,
But at the end of the day, the only way you're getting into this is coming down the sidewalk because there's no parking.
correct. Yeah, it's a pedestrian-only pocket park. Yeah. So,
And what's to the right and left, north, south, whatever it is?
This is
The
the
lighthouse.
Sportsman's Club and then the lighthouse.
lighthouse
Building.
of, it's the nonprofit.
Nonprofit, yeah.
And then the bar to the north, and then there's a street just south of the nonprofit that's like you could park at if you wanted to park, and you'd be one building away on the side street. If you wanted public parking.
The lighthouse side is it the asphalt right up to the property line?
No, I think it's grass. I think there's grass, he's got an aerial shot of it right there.
Yeah, I just couldn't, it
Or
looks
is
like,
it parking? I guess it is
Yeah, it's pretty
parking,
much
pretty
parking.
yeah, it
close.
looks like the same over here,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah. That's why controlling the water with a rain garden or something seemed to make sense, cause we can't sheet our stuff into their we can't run our stuff into their parking. So, we did and this meandering with circles and big benches, we talked about here at the very end, doing a nice, picnic table, like the kind you see at, Dairy Queen that are dipped in, the mesh ones that are super heavy duty from Uline, they're inexpensive. And then incorporating some really nice Art Deco type benches around the radiuses, if we did radiuses, this meandering walk. These round circles kinda depict raised planter beds just randomly placed, which would be whatever. And then the idea was behind the sign, this is the shelter for the future bus stop. There would at least be a pad here for that if we didn't do it. And then a little bicycle repair place that we put in for grants for that money too, for a pump and a rack where you can hang the bike and it's got all the tools and wrenches hanging there on stainless steel cables. And that would kind of be disguised behind the sign, from view as you came in, so there would be an amenity there. And then just some benches, low bushes, combination of evergreen and deciduous trees, natural plants. We talked about maybe, the only issue with doing milkweed in a native butterfly area down here at the corner would possibly be the spread of the species, might be, I don't know how it would work with all the parking lots around, it might just die, how that was an option here, which, we would work with the landscape architect, whoever's on that subcommittee meeting. And then way back here, it's pretty far back there, there's a huge tree somewhere in this.
Yeah, there's a tree.
This,
that's what I'm
a
saying.
huge monstrous oak tree somewhere in this area here too. So the thought was kind of keep it lower in the front and gradually, not necessarily the berming, but the vegetation, work its way to the backdrop. So you could see, when you look past the sign, that there's seating areas and little gathering, and I think with my depiction of 3 gathering spaces, it would be 4 or 5, as long as that is, depending on how they design it, So you could actually have a couple of different places to sit, not all be sharing the space with the same.
Looking at that, though, I feel like 3 would be appropriate.
Yeah, I was just, it was really hard to scale it because it's so skinny and long on a piece of paper, so. But that's kind of a pocket park, isolated pocket park type.
So
Design.
I know we don't wanna, we discussed not having sidewalks going in from the, side businesses, but, I know we can all, I think, agree that people are gonna be walking in from there. People are maybe gonna come out of the restaurant, employees or patrons or whatever, they're gonna wanna go into the park and maybe sit
Smoke.
down, smoke,
Yeah.
just take a
have
break,
lunch.
hang out, just talk, sit at the park bench, and then maybe even the same thing from Lighthouse. So, do we wanna throw out the idea completely to have the sidewalk? Cause otherwise they're just gonna be walking over.
Well, we were gonna make it where it's easy to traverse in, but it's not a sidewalk. And again, that's up to whether or not what the liability is of them giving up their parking spot. We don't wanna have a sidewalk go right into someone's parking spot, so they'd have to make that a non-parking spot, cause they're right up against the property. If you were gonna sidewalk out to it, I would think they would need to commit to that being an access, so we didn't go down that road until we didn't wanna assume that was a doable thing,
Okay.
so. But we were considering the same thing you were, accessibility, knowing they're coming, but would we put in just some
Encourage it.
stone, pieces of stone slate in the landscaping bed or something to be like, hey, there's a way through without wrecking our landscaping and it's right here.
Mhm.
Type of, more subtle,
Okay.
way of doing it, but I think we all agree that we encourage people to use it,
Yeah.
you know, so
But can I ask a question? Has either one of the owners on either side of the property been talked to about the park? Because one of the things I'm looking at is like, if you build it as nice as you guys are intending to, we're intending to, it's gonna get used, and I'm thinking Dixie Highway is kind of a scary road to walk down.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't be so bad if I suddenly just, now that I can see the parking spots, I could park right there and walk across. So now we're almost encouraging people to use their parking lots. So, you know, that's why, I mean, to answer the question about could we put a sidewalk there, I mean, I think we should just at least say, hey, this is what we're doing. You know, what do you guys think? And probably gather their feedback a little bit, because if they're like, we better not see cars in there, because we're gonna tow them instantly.
Yeah.
In which case then, that may change how the landscaping looks to kind of put a buffer zone so they don't do that.
yeah, and we're not proposing this to be,
A gathering.
we're not
place.
proposing
Yeah.
it for it to be a place, a destination like a park. It's, you know, Gus knows how many people go up and down Dixie all the time. There's just nowhere on Dixie to stop. I mean, unless you go in the cemetery, there's literally nowhere on Dixie to stop. So,
Or even for the bike rides or whatever.
or walking or
Bike
biking
ride,
or whatever,
like
you know? 'cause
club
we
of the
both see
neighborhood
'em.
in the back.
And, there's a lot of gyms on the street. You get a lot of joggers that run to a certain point and come back,
Yeah.
and bicyclists. So we're not, I wasn't, if the concept of this at some point morphed into a veterans memorial, or, you know, some nonprofit stepped up and said, we wanna start, you know, cause we did talk about, do we wanna, this leaves us a lot of, because it's flat, of adding interesting things, adding monuments, adding memorials, adding, you know, if we wanted to. You know, but then maybe you'd have to, park on the side street next to the lighthouse legally where the old cemetery is there. They got people buried there before 1800, before the Civil War. So there is one building away, where we, you know, where you could park if you wanted to go patronize it, but I'm thinking that it's gonna be mostly used by, probably by the people
Bikers
going
and
to,
walkers.
bikers, walkers, and people going to the bar, coming out and, you know, stopping in there and just chatting or hanging out, or maybe you get carry out and sit in, you know, there and have your lunch instead of inside, or they go there to have a smoke, you know, or something like that.
John, did you talk to, was it you or Kim that talked to the sportsman owner?
I didn't talk to the owner. I went
Okay.
in and talked to the employees when I had lunch there and just said, you're here all day, what do you want to see there?
Yeah.
And they gave feedback that's consistent with this, but personally, you know, I can understand why we wouldn't want to bring additional voices to the table, but I agree with Chuck that, you know, what harm does it do to knock on the door and say, this is what we're thinking about doing, what are your thoughts? Because, you know, from a business owner's perspective, he's right. If people start parking in their parking lot, if this is as nice as we think it's going to be, specifically during certain times of the day, I don't know that I would tolerate that.
Yeah.
And knowing, now, in our defense, these meetings are public and they can come to the meeting. They've been invited. But I wouldn't have any problem going and meeting with the owners just to say, hey, here's what we're thinking about.
Yeah, me neither, especially now that we have somewhat of a vision. The one thing, I didn't wanna get them involved too early on, cause then they would give us a whole bunch of ideas, right? Where we have a board to come up with ideas, and now that we have these, we can kinda share with them, and maybe they want us to tweak things, but I don't know that they should be telling us what, we
Yeah.
should
Well,
or shouldn't do.
I guess the way I would see that is it would be no different than if a member of the public showed up and said, here's my opinion. We would
Yeah.
hear them, but we'd still have to make the best decision.
Sure,
So,
Yeah. that's a good
Yeah,
idea.
just be a little bit more proactive than reactive.
Is
right?
Lighthouse closing or something, Brian? I didn't hear something about, something's going on with Lighthouse.
I'm not sure.
Lighthouse, I discovered, doesn't own the building. They, I think the insurance company, or there's a business inside of that building that owns that building.
Yeah,
So
we've
if
had-
the lighthouse
we've had
leaves,
code
that
enforcement
building will
issues.
still be there.
It goes to a different owner.
Okay.
And I talked to them when we were trying to potentially get an easement before we purchased the land.
Well, I could see those people want it to be a nice little lunch spot to get to,
Oh,
you know?
Yeah, I mean, if I was in the lighthouse, I'd easily, I mean, you guys will find in the summertime, you'll see me outside walking with some of you
Mhm.
to have conversations. So I can see it being used for, yeah, for lots of different reasons. That's why I'm saying, you know, if you go and talk to them, they might be like, yeah, let's put the sidewalk in.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I can see where you'd use that all the time, so you need to put the little stone path against the dry river, or something like that. You know, and if someday we can get the bus there, we got another little bit of things we need to start, let's anticipate some of the issues, where people are gonna get dropped off for the bus. You know, or stuff like that, so I think engaging them, I don't think it can hurt us.
I'm good with that.
I think there's only upside potential, and if they are like, absolutely not, we see a car here, we're towing them, da-da-da, well, then maybe we just make a little bit thicker green fence here, you
Yeah.
know?
I wouldn't mind doing it, but I don't think the Sportsman Club is open.
Yeah, it is.
It is?
No, they're not,
No,
They're under
not for
construction.
business.
Yeah.
not
Not
for
yet,
business.
No,
Yeah.
still says to be determined on the sign as
Yeah.
of yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
I had lunch there 2 weeks ago.
No, I know, but they
They down.
shut it down to finish the project.
Okay.
The sign says closed to be, reopening to be determined.
Well, I don't think there's a big harm in moving forward with the idea of the conceptual aspect of things. And say, hey, we just wanna be courteous and kind, good neighbors, here's what we're looking at doing, what do you guys think? Like you said, any other public comment, you listen, take notes, and go, okay, thank you.
So certainly we have on record somewhere who the owners are and a phone number for them. I'm more than happy to try to reach out to them.
Okay, so, anything else on those two things, the sign or the design? I think we're covered it pretty well. So, the next item, I-4, is Dixie Highway and White Lake Road intersection. Do we have any update on that? I know Dick was kinda giving us feedback on that the last meeting. Do you have any idea of when that's gonna start? I know 2026 is the target.
Yeah, it's a little ways out. I had, let's say it was probably about 3 weeks ago, there's a safety committee that the county has, that a panel of, I mean, it was on the phone, so I think there was probably 10 or 12 of them there. And they physically came out, took a look at all the corners and everything else, and they kind of came back with their feedback. This is a problem we see here, this is a problem we see here. They then take that recommendation to the engineers, the ones who ultimately decide what's gonna happen. And through there, I did talk about trying to get the right-of-way, or an easement on, I'll call it the northeast corner, where the drugstore is,
Yeah.
to try to make a right-hand turn lane there. They're like, okay, well, they were like, okay. But they were talking about maybe making some realignments, because it's not quite exactly lined up. They're talking about flattening some of the things out, because there's a little bit of a hill there. They also suggested that at the Neiman's entrance, or the entrance where the sign is on White Lake Road, that entrance there, maybe making it only a one-way turn out of there. Same thing with the other thing. So they're talking about those types of things, right? They're supposed to have the report done, I think, by the end of this month, to get it over to the engineering, and then we're just back in a pause mode. Also, today, I talked to Dick, and, you know, he and I were talking about what can be done, and with his experience, I said, why don't you take a look and see what we can do, what the next phase is gonna be, and how we can start managing that. So, yeah, there's things we're talking about. I'm still trying to get with the Walgreens, but as I think everybody knows, drugstores right now are having major issues. They're shutting them down left and right. I don't know if that's the reason why I'm not getting return calls right now. You know, we just got through the holidays and all that, so I anticipated we wouldn't get anything. But it's probably time for me to try reaching out again, and I will do that probably either by the end of this week or beginning of next.
Awesome. Were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna say, that's a down-the-road future project for the DDA.
Yeah.
That makes sense to actively pursue it, though, because of the timing. If we don't get it done before 2026, and we don't wanna do it as a standalone project, it would just.
Are you
waste-
talking about the right hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should be
Yeah,
all
yeah.
done at once,
Yeah,
yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
So
From a
that's-
cost standpoint and everything else, right?
Right,
And easier on the driver,
Yeah.
public too.
Yeah, and, they were concerned, there was a whole bunch of ADA-type compliance things that it wasn't compliant, matter of fact, they were standing in the puddle. So there's definitely things they're looking at from the sidewalk standpoint, and kind of more aligning. So I think right now it's on a little bit of an angle, so there's things they're gonna recommend, I don't know ultimately at the end of the day what the engineers are gonna do, but that's kind of where we're at with that. And Dick will be engaged through that whole process,
Okay.
our Carlisle group.
All right, so the last item of business is this form from the Carlisle Group that is proposing that they would help us with the design for the plot of land here on Dixie. It looks like they would meet with the township representatives to discuss desired amenities, site opportunities, or limitations. Use the property survey and information to gather the kickoff meeting, develop dimensional design plans, and then plan will include elevation sketches, a scale drawing, and estimated quantities for plant, and hardscape materials. And then they would present those to us as the DDA board. And the budget for that project would be $5,000. There would be 2 meetings included. Additional meetings may require additional billing. Sam?
So it's kind of so there's a 4-step process that we need to go through. We got conceptual drawings, which, I'm sure you're gonna set up a subcommittee meeting, or whatever, or they could be, full board meetings with Dick, however, Then we've got the engineering, so we're gonna need to decide, do we wanna use Nowak and Frous for the engineering, the survey, or do we wanna put an RFP out for it? Brian, I don't know if Kieft would have that, because they're the local guys that have everything, if it makes sense in Nowak and Frous, maybe you would know that. So we gotta, once the conceptual's done, in the interim, we need to get a plot plan, done. That's right, and then we're gonna need engineering, and then we're gonna need the engineering drawings, so the conceptual plan of Dick's being converted into biddable, buildable drawings, for the landscaper, and then paying the engineer, if it's Nowak and Frous, to do the RFP, so that, sooner than later, we can put this out for bid to the landscape companies to come up with a contract, so it's kind of the next, to get it to the point where someone can bid on the job, we gotta get through the 4 steps. We gotta get through the conceptual, then decide who we're using for the engineering, then the drawings, and then the RFP, so,
Okay,
Any
I'm
thoughts?
just gonna say it, that seems completely ridiculous to spend all that time and money to do that. You can go to any one of the local landscaping companies, if they charge you $5,000, they'll credit it towards the project. They'll give you pretty much everything in here for free. So I'm trying to understand, why do we have to go through, and again, I look at things more from a private, not government, and I understand there's certain things for the RFPs and all that, but, it just seems like an awful lot of steps to get something that we can get for free.
well, you can probably, right, Brian, if you had an RFP created.
Well, yeah,
That-
but it's only a $5,000 expense for this. Now, to prepare bid specs, I don't know that cost. I know it's pretty pricey when we did the intersection, but that's not necessarily Nowak and Frous's fault, it's just expensive to put bid specs together. And it all depends on the detail. So,
So let me put it this way. I did that whole Eversfield, and way more complicated than this. And this whole phase was free. And I went on to say it's free. He said, okay, if you go with me, then I'll add it into, I'll
yeah,
make it part of the
Yeah,
price,
yeah.
we'll credit it back.
How many companies did you go to? Just the one?
No, I went to 2 different ones.
Okay.
And so in here, when I'm looking at this, and I'm not saying we're gonna use them, I'm just saying that, even at my house, I'm getting ready to do a major, probably way more than we're gonna spend on this. And even they're like, hey, I went out to 3 different guys, and they said, hey, if you want me to do it, I'll do a design and all that, but you're gonna either pay me for the design if I don't get the contract, or if I get it, then I'll just credit it back to the project.
I think I'm good, I mean, I'm just reciting the way that we normally do stuff that it was explained to me, not how I agree with you.
Okay.
That's the way of cutting it. My
Yeah.
whole thing though is I think the complexity is, what you're saying is hard when you have to put it out, you know, for bid and then open it up if we exceed the limits, which so I think we can get through the concept, the engineering and the drawings all without, Brian, wouldn't you agree, exceeding what, because the DDA has some latitude on what money we can spend and how
Yeah,
we
we
spend
do.
it. We're not under the same exact rules as the township,
Permit,
but
yep.
to, to put it out for bid, to create the RFP to do what you're saying, which I agree with, that we gotta have a concept plan first to
Yep.
show the guy. And then we could do an RFP to say that we want you to bid on the design, you know, to do the final drawings, the engineering. They might not be able to do the survey, that the township should have a legitimate survey done on the property. But to your point, the guy's doing the landscaping. We think we just gotta word it in a way that we can put it out for bid, that you're bidding also the design and the planting at the same time. You know what I mean? And then we do, because then we gotta do sealed, for that, it's gonna be past the point where we're gonna wanna do sealed bids for the planting and hardscape and sidewalks and then are we buying all of the benches and bicycle racks and all that for them, or are they including it? So I think the only thing, Chuck, is really just how to present it so it's the same to each guy we offer it to, and then they kick in the drawing, you know, the drawing and final drawing part is what you're trying to.
No, I'm saying literally, I could walk out of here tomorrow, I can call 3 of the landscaping companies I know that are bigger operations in the area and say, here's the thing, I need a conceptual drawing, okay? And know that I'm not gonna pay you for it, but if you win the contract, you can bill me for it. And say that, you know, and here's our budget, here's conceptually what we're thinking, you know, and say, do you wanna do it? And I don't know if we can do this part, but, you know, just to participate, you know, if you end up being the winning bid, then you could put a sign in there saying, you know, designed by. You know, and that way we can go through and say, that way they'll go, okay, I might take the risk on spending 10 hours putting together a conceptual if I know that I can have a little bit of a sign there saying that it was designed by in there and move forward. Because at the end of the day, this is not that big of a project. The cement's probably gonna cost us the most of anything in here.
Sure. I think the bigger thing is that we just need to make sure that we're open to other bids. I don't think we as a board can just go pick our 3, right? Don't we have to leave it up to the public to?
No, you can pick your 3.
we can
Or
pick our 3? What
just
about,
put it
what
out
about
for
with the,
bid.
what about with the demolition that we did of the land? We put that out for bid, we put it
Yeah,
on our
it was on-
website, had people go there, they could put their own bids on it.
That was through BidNet, yeah.
Okay.
No, just, we can do the same thing. I mean, if you wanna feel
Because
more
it
comfortable,
stops us from, you know,
So
I hear you.
going to our buddies and
I hear that.
hiring.
How do we get?
put it
so
on there and just
if-
tell them that part of the bidding process is you have to give us a conceptual drawing.
So, okay, so how would that work with multiple people giving us conceptual drawings, meeting with the people telling them what to do?
I think that we have to
Provide images
Yeah,
of what we
exactly.
want, and they bring it to life.
say, this is directionally what we're thinking, but at the same token, I'm not sure, do we really wanna restrict them? They're the experts at designing this stuff. So why would we not say, we wanna have a meandering path, we wanna be able to have a bikes place, we wanna be able to have some benches, and we have a little bit of an irrigation possibility or low land we need to have addressed. This is the dimensions, we think maybe there'll be a bus stop here possibly in the future, go give us your best design. And then the
You
board
define
sits
it.
back and looks at it and says,
You
all
can
right,
define it
all
like
these
that.
4,
Someone's gotta put that together, it's like a mini RFP.
Yeah.
yeah, and then put it on the site
Right.
and say that part of your submittal will have to be a conceptual rendering.
And they'll have a date to have it in by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against I'm not against it, I just want the logistics to work so we can get
Yeah.
it done. You know, as long as it's just, I'm all for trying to save money doing it that way, and I even, well, I forget who I was talking to about the fact that on this, we're gonna make sure that local guys know about it. You know, because other projects, local guys don't check the website to see what we're putting out for bid. Big companies who have people sitting in offices checking websites is who does that. That's why we pay so much.
And
Yeah.
to your point, you know, if we want
You
to
know
make
what I
sure
mean?
that there, we all know there's like 3, 4 big landscaping companies here, big for this area.
Right.
You know, we can call them, if you guys know anybody else, we can call them and say, hey, it's up on the site.
direct
I
them to
mean,
the site.
We're not doing, I don't think we're doing anything wrong by letting our buddies know that there's an opportunity here.
Sure.
It's up at the end, they're all, but at the end of the day, they're all competing together at the same time.
And I can make a suggestion, one at the Brady Lodge, when we did the heating and cooling, we solicited to get people who wanted to bid the project. We met them at the Brady Lodge. We went over our thoughts and scopes and worked out the bugs of it with everyone at the same, all the bidders at the same exact time. And then said, what we just talked about, that's what you come back with. So it was very fair, because it was, you know, we sat at a
Right.
table and we're like, here's all the stuff, everybody
gotcha.
knows we're on the same page. Now come back with what we're asking. I think that's,
Yeah.
would be a good way to do it, to say on, you know, February 13th at 1 o'clock, we're having a meeting at the township, all bidders that are interested in having it, we're gonna tell you what we're looking for, and there's no dispute,
I
what
think
was
that's fair.
said in the room, who said it,
Yeah.
you know, and, you know, that would be a way to, I think, get
Yeah.
closer to what you're talking about. That worked out really good, because we got 7 bidders that way at Brady Lodge, opposed to the normal 3.
Yeah, I mean, and I've dealt
You
with
know?
that a lot, when I get government contracts or bidding on government contracts, they have a set time, you call in or get on the teams meeting, and they go through the list of what they want, and, you know, sometimes they don't even allow you to ask questions, but most of the time they do, and you get done, that's it, that's all they'll talk to you about, until you submit your bid.
So that's, you know,
But I think if we do it that way, then we, one, we'll save money, and I'm sure Dick's a smart guy, he'll figure out how to get us $5,000 somehow. But at least for this part of it, the phase of it and everything else, I think we can get it all done at really no cost.
And relatively quickly,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we would wanna have somewhat of a subcommittee to meet with these people.
Yeah.
You know, which I'd like to be on it if possible, but the sign thing's a whole nother deal, we gotta do kind of the same, a different group of people need to do the sign thing the same kind of way, you know what I mean?
but some of these guys, and I would say yes, but also take into consideration that some of these guys have done a bunch of subdivisions and other types of signs, so they might even bring an idea, like, hey, I like your concept of what you're saying here, but I think based on this logo and everything else, this is kind of really more what you're looking for.
Right.
And so again, I would say, you know, let the experts be the one telling us, we just need to give them some direction.
You know, some ideas,
Yeah.
native plants, this, that, try to
Yeah.
incorporate some things.
Or just tell them that, hey, you know, at the end of the day, we want low maintenance, no maintenance.
Was there anything that we talked about tonight that people really just didn't bite, none of us really cared for, or didn't bite on, or thought we were lacking?
No, nothing that I disagree with, but what I do agree with is I love the idea of making sure the local landscaping companies are made aware that this is happening. I think that would be just fantastic to be able to keep this inside the township.
Well, you know, somebody can be responsible for just, I think, you know, in the, was it the Clarkston News or somewhere there, I see, there's a list of ones that have, we signed up, and I can't remember where that list is. Do you know where that list is? I saw a list of like different, like even auto repair, which there's not many anymore.
Chamber?
And maybe the chamber, yeah, so maybe
That'd
get
be
a
a
list.
good resource, you
Yeah, go
know?
to the chamber, just get the list of all the landscaping, and just, somebody call them. And that way, it doesn't look like we're being discriminatory, or backroom deals or whatever, and, you know,
So
let it
it'd be
go.
like a pre-meeting.
Pre-pre.
Yeah.
Our
So I'd be
pre-teams-
happy to contact people unless you want somebody to do the township, but once we can establish it, you know, pick a date and establish it and, you know, or whatever. I mean, I don't.
But we do need to get moving, because I know that those guys, they're already booking out April, May, June.
Yeah.
So,
And this is a big, high-profile job, so it could help us.
well, you know,
Could
I
be
think for
like-
some.
could help them too.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
what
lot
I
of
mean.
exposure.
That's what I mean. It could help us because it,
And I think if
It
we can
gives
put
them
their
that.
sign in there saying designed by, have it tasteful, small, and if that's allowed, I think that would be also a big encouraging,
Marketing.
I'm gonna participate, even though I'm gonna have to put 10 hours in and may not get paid for it. I think that's a good risk turnoff.
We did a lot of, I mean, that's how we built the first senior center. We called in all the locals and got it done cheap.
So I'm happy to help out on that committee.
Okay.
Very good. So we discussed a lot of things, but one of which we gotta talk to the owners of the Sportsman's Club, get their input. The person who owns the building at the lighthouse, see if they have any input with the designs that we have now. And the most important would be to, collect all these ideas together so that we can, put together some sort of way to present, our ideas to landscaping companies.
So I volunteered to reach out to the owners, but before I do that, Gus or Sam, do you know them?
No.
No?
I've I know several managers at the Sportsman, and Tom is not there all the time, but he's the owner. His
Okay.
name is Tom.
Okay.
But I can reach out through their manager. I can reach out to him and.
Well, Brian, would you have information that I
Yeah,
would?
we'll get 'em.
Okay, all right, I'll reach out to you tomorrow and get that, and then we can, whatever it takes to get in contact with him. I think it does
I
need to
mean,
be
if
the
you want
owner
me, I
weighing
can
in.
come and talk to him as well too.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I can come with you and talk to
Oh.
him,
Yeah, that'd be great.
if that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so the last item of business that we discussed, it sounds like we changed a little bit, so do we need to make a motion to remove that from the agenda?
It was just a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
My question to you is, do you wanna commit to the committees? Do your sign committee deal with kind of what we just did, and then the landscape committee deal with
Yeah.
putting something together to meet with the landscape guys, or how do you wanna do that?
Well, I think Chuck has a good thought, is that the person that's gonna do the landscape design probably has resource. If they don't do signs themselves, they probably subcontract people that would do signs that they've worked with before. So that might be a good avenue to go with first, instead of trying to have one company do the signs and then landscaping and then bringing them together. I mean, we can go that avenue, but it might be best to ask the landscaping companies first if they would make that part of their design, would be our sign.
Can't hurt.
Well, I would say that we should try to set something up by the 1st of February to meet with get these landscapers, meet with these landscapers sometime in the next few weeks, because that's gonna, it's just gonna keep going and going if we don't do it. I think we have enough to give them a meeting, and see who we can round up. Someone's just gotta lock in the date in the room and everyone's, availability.
I mean, or can we not make it a subcommittee? We just do a special meeting where we would invite them so that all the board members can be part of it.
Well, I think in my opinion, since you said it, I think that we should, if we're gonna do that, we should get it dialed in more. I don't wanna have 5 landscape contractors and all of us up here bouncing all, a bunch, that, I don't know how well that's.
Too many chefs in the kitchen.
I don't know. I haven't, never tried it like that before. I don't know what that does.
I mean, I feel like we all have a very similar vision of what we should do here.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point, that's going to happen. As they bring ideas to the table and bring designs, I think we're gonna change our mind. We're gonna like this or like that. So I feel pretty comfortable with your original idea of let's get something together by the end of the month.
What about if we get the landscapers together, we meet with them, we give them our stuff, the ones who wanna participate or are willing to put in the conceptual drawing for free, then we have them come to a special meeting and make their presentations to the board, so there's at least something already done kind of professionally, that we're starting at a critiquing point opposed to just from the very beginning meeting? Do you think that would get us there faster?
So I think that if, having done a couple of large-scale projects, I think you just tell them, this is the things I want. I want a meandering path. I want it, 6 feet wide, okay? I would like to have, I don't care how long, but just kind of meander. I want to have some sort of green fencing in the back here. I want to have, maybe 2 or 3 rest areas, whether they're benches or whatever. They could be stone, because that would be even low maintenance, and we don't have to worry about theft. Some of those things. You just give them the high-level stuff, and then let them go. And then when they come back, then we could say maybe it's a 2-phase process. The first one is we're gonna take, and hopefully we have 6, 7 different people come in, give us designs. Then we'll say we're gonna narrow it down to 3, and then we will invite those 3 back and say, okay, we weren't quite as clear as we thought we were, or you know what, this took us in a direction that we weren't expecting. How would this work? And then we may have those individual conversations afterwards.
So, put it out, have some people give them some data first.
Mm-hmm.
Get their concepts, then bring the best concepts back to, then have
Right.
another meeting and bring the best concepts back
Mm-hmm.
to the meeting.
Yeah.
Does that make,
Yeah, that's what I would say. And
talking
then,
about?
and then just tell them that our hard date is here to make a decision. So they know that we're not gonna keep running them back and forth and wasting their time and so on and so forth.
And I think our hard date should be our next meeting in March.
Agreed.
So before we meet them in March, we get guys, we sit down with some guys in February and give them some parameters to work off of, and then tell them we're gonna pick the best, the top 3, and then, for a March discussion to dial in the details. Is that kinda
Yeah, you guys we only meet once a month?
every other month?
Every other month.
That's the problem.
So we might have to have a special meeting just to go through and say, okay, we're gonna deal with this issue alone. Just because, again, if we don't lock these guys in,
Yeah,
this isn't gonna get done until August.
right.
Takes forever.
It does.
So what would be the best person and way of reaching out to the local, how do we wanna do it, through Brian's office, just through, like when we did the heating, I just called some heating guys I knew, but somebody's gotta set up this pre-meeting and get the word out to all the, let's say we're gonna invite chamber members, which are Lowry, all the other local guys,
Yeah.
somewhere within the 10-mile radius,
Right.
or something like that.
There's a meeting tonight at the library. How do we get that information out? What's our protocol for the township to get information out?
Well, we usually put an ad in the paper. We usually advertise
The
them in the
meeting at the
paper.
library about the park?
Most of the
How do we
time,
inform
it's social
people about
media and the paper.
Are they televising that? What to do with the park? That's tonight, right?
Yeah.
Is that tonight?
I think
You
it's
get
right
their
now.
That's the
input.
first
tonight.
meeting of the
Oh,
two, what to do with the parkland?
I don't know.
Yeah.
The new land we just purchased.
But I'm more asking, how do we tell the community about that? Because in the same way, we should probably tell the community, hey, we have this landscaping project coming up, and we're looking for landscaping companies to give us bids.
Social media,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
What I would do is have,
Instagram or
have
Facebook.
Lauren
That's all.
post it,
Lauren's really, yeah.
and then we'll share it to, then people who all have pages will share it around town.
So I'll get
Share
Lauren
the
to-
township's notice to, around town,
Yeah. So I'll get Lauren to put something on social media. And then I would say that just by grabbing the list from the chamber and calling the whatever number there is, that's probably gonna be the most effective way to get it out there. But just in case some people aren't members of the chamber, which is completely possible, it would then be also, who do you know? Again, I don't think there's probably more than a dozen in the area. So, if we're just working off the ones we know in the chamber list, I think we're probably gonna hit 95% of them.
Yeah, and half of them won't work probably for the municipality, so.
They may not, I don't know.
Because of the way the money works.
Where they're booked out.
And I know that the municipality,
Yeah.
I know that we, as the township, we do have a relationship with a landscaper that does do stuff for us.
Yeah. Usually
So,
what kills
but
the
that
deal,
person's not in town. so.
it's usually the fact that we can't give them a deposit that kills the deal on most of the guys, so that just knocks out the littler guys who can't fund the whole thing, cause we're not allowed to. Like, we just did a big one in West Bloomfield, we had to put money down on to secure all the plants for the spring, which the township won't do, so guys who, that also aids in why we spend so much, because you gotta work with companies big enough to fund everything till the end.
Right.
So that kinda limits you
Does
with,
the DDA have to follow those guidelines as well?
Well,
You'd have to ask Carrie, cause she's
Yeah.
the purse keeper when that comes to that kind of stuff.
yeah, the procurement policy, I'm not sure how it applies to the DDA.
It might be different though, I've heard tale of that.
Yeah. I've heard different schools of thought on that.
I can ask her.
You could check.
I'll
into
check
it.
with Carrie.
Or Dan, somebody.
Carrie knows it inside and out, so she would know. Especially when we're talking about, well, contract's gonna be a lot higher because you're gonna have landscaping, all of it being done at once, not just the design.
Mhm.
So, it depends what
Yeah.
that cost expenditure is gonna be.
And we might have a different sign company that puts the sign in before landscapers even show up, cause that's all heavy infrastructure and foundation work and stuff.
But all the
We'll find
signs,
out.
yeah, all the
Find
signs I
out.
saw there, those are all hardscape signs, landscapers will do. I mean, they're really,
Or they
except
have
for,
they subcontract
Right.
with
Yeah.
sign company.
Yeah.
the only thing would be probably that lasered.
Mhm.
I don't know any landscaper that does that, they'll have to
That's gonna
contract
be a
out.
No, but that's,
piece that you add.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a company right on M59 that does that.
All right, productive meeting. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.